Development. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome to our conversation here talking about open textbooks and Pressbooks. My name is DeCoster. I'm the director of the library and also under the Title V grant ensuring success for the new majority student, I'm sort of in charge of the little OER piece in that grant. And today I'm joined by my colleagues, Brittany Hanson from psychology, Sharath Jagannathan from data science, and Sookram from accounting and business law. And online joining us is Walonen from the English department. His kids had delayed opening, so he is joining us remotely today, which I understand. So today, these faculty members, the real point of today, why I wanted to do this, are going to share their individual unique textbook projects that they've completed. They were all members of the 2023 Title V OER Summer Institute. But please allow me just a couple minutes to talk about what we've been doing with OER at St. Peter's since 2021 and some ongoing opportunities for you all. So also to explain why the library is involved, I always feel a need to do this. So college and university librarians were early promoters of open educational resources, I think because we witnessed firsthand the struggles students had obtaining expensive course materials. First generation students are sometimes shocked and confused that their textbooks aren't provided to them. I remember being a little surprised as a first gen student that you had to buy so much. Sometimes they're surprised at the library, right? The place with all the books, the place that's supposedly giving you books for free, can't get them their textbooks. Sometimes we witness students kind of resenting faculty they bought the book, but the faculty member didn't use the book every week. So there was almost a bit of resentment around that. Well, we saw that faculty were sometimes doing their best teaching outside of the book. So libraries and faculty tried to ease the pain of this course materials cost issue through course reserves. And we also saw the limits of this service, not just with students having to be in the library and use the book in a 2-hour loan, but also as the commercial publishers have moved to this access code model for a lot of the big commercial textbooks. We couldn't even have a print reserved copy. And there's no way these commercial publishers don't license for course reserves. So faculty definitely here at St. Peter's noticed this textbook cost issue over the years. And for that reason, when we started promoting OER with these faculty workshops, it's really, I think, pretty easy at St. Peter's to encourage people to consider OER. Faculty were pretty eager to transition to a free textbook, and it's a lot of work to switch your textbook, but I saw faculty here, if the textbook was robust, that met their learning goals, they were willing to jump in. And this happened a lot at St. Peter's in fields like business and the natural sciences, as the Rice University's OpenStax project created a lot of really good textbooks in these areas, with also the ancillary materials like the PowerPoints and the quizzes. However, in the beginning, our OER initiative was really up to 2021 about like, hey, there's some free stuff out there, try to use it. But to remind people what open educational resources are, they're teaching and learning materials licensed to be free for the end user to own, share, and in many cases modify. So while I could tell faculty where to find OER, like in 2019 and 2020, I could be like, look at OpenStax. A lot of disciplines didn't have anything good. And I couldn't help faculty create OER, open textbooks anyway. There's no way to write it. And I couldn't help faculty modify an existing book, which was kind of the promise of OER, not just that it's free to your students, but that it's yours to like edit and change and localize and do whatever you want with. So I felt we needed at St. Peter's operational support to give our faculty a platform where they could do these things. So I saw that successful OER models at other universities always included some kind of mini grant or stipend, something that supported faculty to embark on this project, right? Because it is work, especially when you're doing this stuff, creating and adapting it. So I was advocating for these goals at the provost's office, and while I did not obtain like operational budget support for OER, Dr. Mildred Milon included a small amount of funding for OER in this Title V grant, which the grant centered around like reducing costs and online learning. There's a lot of instructional design stuff in the Title V grant. So this grant, first it helped the library at our collaboration rooms, which if you have never seen them, we have like very nice reservable spaces for students now for group study. But it also created this Summer Institute model where we invite faculty to propose modifying an existing open book or creating their own open book in Pressbooks. And faculty whose proposals are accepted into the Summer Institute, we do bi-weekly meetings over the summer, online, everything online, and have some training sessions. Pressbooks offers their own training sessions, and this is intended to create a mini learning community here around open publishing. I certainly learned a lot. There's some stuff we should have put in the grant, like probably professional editing support and some other things I'm learning about. But we still have another year of this program. Faculty receive an initial stipend to participate in the Summer Institute, and then a second, small stipend for publishing their book, and then a third stipend when their students, and all these folks have completed all this, when their students assess the book, so we can see how students are responding to these new open textbooks. So that's a little introduction to how we got together, and I'm going to share, I distributed these cards to the participants here, but also in the chat, I put these links. And all of these faculty books are in our St. Peter's Pressbooks catalog. So you can like look at them there. And they also become part of the Pressbooks directory, which is the link on the top. And the and all their books are open license, so others, this really speaks to our, I think, bigger mission, because they're helping others at other universities that are encountering the same pedagogical needs, you know. And I want to add that, all these, and if you see books in the Pressbooks directory that you would want to modify or adapt, they can be cloned, is the word they use, into our network and modified. So I'm going to pass it on to Brittany. Pull up your book.
Me first? Okay. Hi. So Daisy gave us questions to answer. I will do that. So my book, so I actually created my own book. So I, rather than adapting another one. And her first question is, what inspired you to do this? Well, so there's my book. It came out of something I had already sort of created. So I teach often the senior capstone course in psychology, which involves us designing studies, collecting data, analyzing those studies, writing them up in APA style. And the students take 2 psychology stats class before they get to me when we're actually using that knowledge. But how long ago they took that class varies a lot. It could be last semester, it could be 2 years ago. So I have started, since I started teaching the class, the first unit in the class is sort of a review of how to do statistics. And to help them, I sort of created a little mini cheat sheet guide. And the more times I've taught the class, the longer that guide has gotten. And then a few years ago, I switched from using SPSS, which is a statistical software that is costly and they can only access it through Oporto, which I hate. So I started using Jamovi, which is a free open source statistical software. And when I made that switch, I knew they were going to need even more support since it's the first time they're going to be using it. It's very similar to SPSS, which they learned in an earlier class, but the menus are a little different. So that guide that I made grew from a couple pages to it was over 40 pages when I got this sort of announcement about this OER thing. And it had gotten so long that like I didn't even want to print it out to give to the students because it was like a little stack of paper. And when it got that long, it got kind of unwieldy. So when Daisy put out the call, I was like, hey, I could take my guide, I can flush it out more. And I did. Turn it into almost to a textbook, and then I could use this platform where students could easily access it and click around rather than just having this stack of paper that I give them. So that's what I did. So this is my book. It's using statistics in Jamovi, so it's both a guide to how to use Jamovi and also how to report results in APA style, since that's what they have to do in the class. So just show you a couple things in it. So at the beginning of this thing of my book, actually no, I think it's the second chapter. Yeah, introduction to our data. I actually have the entire book is around one data set, and I have a link to the survey that the data set is and the actual data set here that you can open, and then the idea is that the students can actually follow through each chapter of the textbook and do the analysis because they have the data set, they have the survey, and in each chapter, then it's sort of a step-by-step, screenshot-by-screenshot guide to, how to do things like open data, how to actually do the analysis. Actually, let me go to a different chapter that actually has the analysis. So has the step-by-steps how to do that, and then if we scroll down, it has in each section how to then report it in AK style. So it's an example. So it was really just meant to be a resource for the students in my capstone lab. As we go throughout the semester, we do all sorts of different types of tests, and they have to report it in AK style. And I always go, wait, what am I supposed to do again? And I say, go to the book, right? Because the book is a step-by-step, takes you each way through it. So that was my project. Challenges and unexpected hurdles. I had a big one, which was the original guide that I was using. The example data, all that was something that a colleague of mine who I've met before, friend of a friend, didn't know her super well, but was a colleague. She had a thread on Twitter about an amusing example that she had used in her class. And that's kind of what I ended up basing my example on because I thought it was funny. I was like most of the way through writing this book, and I thought, well, you know what? I should probably email her and let her know that I'm doing this. And, I'll cite her because it was her original idea. Yes, she didn't want me to use her idea. So there's some intellectual property, it is open source, so I have to make it open source. So I had to rewrite the whole book. So Daisy was saying I was in the summer 2023. I didn't actually finish it until last summer because I had to rewrite the entire thing. But then I used it last fall. So that was a challenge and something I probably should have thought of at the beginning, the intellectual property element of it, rather than, when I was almost done writing it. But yeah, as far as using Pressbooks, I found it really usable. There were some things about accessibility that ended up being a lot more work than I thought it would be. So you want to make sure everything's accessible. So that meant things like alt text on images. There's a lot of images in my book, and they are complicated because it's supposed to be like a step-by-step guide. So I think if you counted the word count of the book, and then the word count, if you consider all the alt text, it's probably double what the actual book is because there's so much alt text to properly describe it. So if you are thinking of, using it as a tool like a step-by-step guide, that is another thing to think about. But Pressbooks itself I found very usable, especially if you're used to using Blackboard and using all the options in Blackboard as far as formatting and stuff. It's pretty much the same in Pressbooks. And my students have been have reacted well to it. So I used it in my capstone last fall, and Dan Wisniewski used it in his capstone as well. And they liked the format. They liked that they could jump around easily on the website. And they liked that, when it's midnight and they're writing their lab report that's due the next day, and they can't ask me a question like they would if they had written it in class like I told them to. They can go and find the answer pretty easily because they have the book. And they liked it. We had pretty good feedback, and the students were just happy to have something they could easily reference. So that was my project. I don't know if we're going to do questions at the end or.
Yeah, let's go down the row so we get to Mike and do questions at the end. Sharath, you're up.
Hi. Initially I started this book for like cloning a book, and then suddenly realized that there weren't information which I want to reflect. So what I did is then ended up in writing my own book. So the book I wanted was more hands-on experience, like the same in terms of the statistical book, like they wanted a screenshot by screenshot explaining the process. So I wanted the book to reflect examples so that students can learn in a more interactive way. They can practice on the examples and stuff. And it went on more like as I was preparing the book, I thought like I could have more ideas and like reflect more examples, case studies, real-time case studies. So it grew on me. So I wanted to reflect more and more, and by the end, like I had to complete the book. So so there was a time where I have to say that this is enough for the book. And I have to say that I have to fine tune it and uh, have it ready. Um, like what inspired me is the way it is open source, how you can edit it, and once you even if you complete it and if you want to add more content into it, you're open to it. Like you can add the contents, you can add more examples, and have the students work on it. So the freedom of having our own book, editing, even if it is complete, is like good hands-on experience, both for the faculties as well as for the students who are learning this. Um, when it comes to the Pressbooks, it's like very fluent. It's very easy to understand. It's like very structured. So you are able to use your menus and you're able to add contents with ease. So it's not very difficult. It's very easy to handle Pressbooks. Yeah, and with the content, like I have structured in terms of how visualization can be used in 3 different ways for a student. So I had used Python, R, and Tableau. So I had examples and then I put in a small section for machine learning as well. So students can learn automated machine learning. So I had used this book for my machine learning students who were like impressed, like, wow, I can have a hands-on session without a faculty teaching over the materials. So it was my vision which had gone into the book. And the students were able to grasp that vision and then practice on the examples. Coming to the impact, students were students have to refer a lot of books on the market for one particular concept, or they have to go through videos and other things. Coming to the Pressbook, you have all the contents which you want to deliver in a course in one particular book, and they can refer to it. So it was like very user-friendly and self-paced learning. So I would say overall, I had a very good experience in editing the book, and the students did have a lot of practical examples to practice on, and they did have a hands-on session with the book.
Thanks, Sharath. Yeah, and you can embed video. I'm going to pull up Phil's book. Thank you, Sharath. But you can also, I know you might be like, but I have my videos in Blackboard, and that might make sense too. But if you have, Pressbooks does accommodate like a lot of different, all right, let me go to Phil's book, a lot of different media types, just as a little interjection here. So if you did have a video that you really want to be in the text because, you know, you want students to experience it well, in the textbook, you can totally combine the mediums. Oh, there's Phil.
Perfect. Thank you, Daisy. All right, everyone. Good to see you today. Just for those that don't know me, I'm Sookram. I'm an accounting professor here. I've been teaching here for the last 7 years. And I'm also the director of the Master's Accounting program for the last 3 years. And the reason I bring that up is because I'll do a quick poll to the audience and people online. By show of hands, how many people love the textbook that they're using in their course right now?
I wrote it.
Okay.
So.
Brittany, for sure. And how many people think their book is okay? You use it, it's not great, it could be better. Okay, great. How many people hate the textbook that they're using in their course right now? Okay, good. So when I started teaching, I did not love, just like all of us, you get a syllabus, you get a textbook, and you start realizing the textbook may not go with your course, and then everything kind of derails very quickly. That's what kind of led me to OER. The first few years I was teaching accounting here, I was using Cengage, Pearson, a lot of third-party platforms that have the accounting text and also the problems. But one of the biggest issues we noticed was that students couldn't afford that platform. So if they couldn't pay for it, then immediately your class is completely different because you have to cater to those students. So thanks to Daisy speaking at Faculty Day one day about OER and OpenStax, fortunately, there is an OpenStax, a free accounting textbook that's out there on the market. So in about 2021, I think it was fall 2021, I started to use these free accounting textbooks in my financial and managerial accounting classes, whether it was undergrad or grad. When I was using the grad textbook, one thing that I noticed was after the class was complete in fall 21, I went back into the Blackboard shell in spring 22, and I noticed students were still logging into the platform. So I presume they were looking to look at the textbook, not their grade that's already set. So that was when I brought it to Daisy, and I was like, this is kind of amazing. And we were able to kind of speak at Kane University about OER resources. And then as everything rolled forward, Daisy talked about the grant that had the OER opportunity with the Pressbooks platform. So what I did this past fall, just like Brittany and Sharath, what I did is I was actually a part of a Pressbooks cohort, a pilot cohort for the H5P interactivities. And I'll show you what that means in a second. But basically, I used this Pressbooks platform in my class. It allowed students to interact and engage in the textbook and be able to not only have it for free, but they can, like Sharath said, we can go at your pace. And and that was kind of the inspiration behind the OER. As far as my project, I'll just show you up here. So this accounting textbook, this was already an OpenStax textbook. I didn't create my textbook. I just adapted every single thing that was already out there. I didn't make one adjustment to the content. I do hopes in the future to write my own textbook like my two colleagues. But one thing that really worked out well is I basically, for anyone that has, I know many people may not have taken an accounting class in a long time, but for those that do remember Intro to Accounting or Financial Accounting, the first 5 chapters of the textbook really goes through financial statements, the accounting cycle, and just financial reporting and analysis, which is basically the basic concepts that everyone really needs to take away from accounting. So what I did is that book was in 5 chapters, and I kind of thought, chapter 3 is a little longer than I would have liked. It wasn't really perfect. So with Pressbooks, I was able, like my colleague said, I was able to take the content and remix it in a way that kind of fit for me and the style of my class, especially since I teach an undergrad, which is 16 weeks, but the grad program is 12 weeks. So, sometimes the pacing and tweaking, it's not really easy to do with a commercial textbook. So I took the first 5 chapters and I kind of broke them out into 8 modules. And within these 8 modules, I actually kind of have it broken down into like day to day. People can follow along this web link at their pace, but when you're using it in a course, we kind of embed it in Blackboard, so it looks a little different. But I think one of the biggest impacts for me is I really like the H5P interactivity because it will allow people to engage in the textbook. So if I go to chapter 2, I kind of have my assignments listed as knowledge checks. So if we go knowledge check 2.1 here, this one is multiple choice, but there's so many different types. There's fill in the blank, there's matching, there's like 50 different things you can do.
And you built all these in Pressbooks.
I built all these.
So this was Phil's kind of modification, was making his book interactive and having learning assessments. I didn't even know Pressbooks did that when we got it. Anyway.
Yeah, no. And thanks for bringing that up, Daisy, because I just took the problems that were in the book. The problem was when I was using a static textbook, it's like the assignments are outside the textbook, all that stuff. Pressbooks allows you to mold all this stuff all in one platform, one place. So, for example, this says, which of these is not one of the financial statements? I'll put the balance sheet, see if that's correct or not. Mm-hmm. And it actually not only says like it's not correct, but you can even edit it to have text to like give them hints and whatnot. So there's a lot of tweaking that could be done. Each problem is a little different, but I think it allows a student to engage in the textbook. And also, since this is a web link, a student anyone with a phone can literally use this textbook and kind of study. So if you're on a commute or you're far away, like the ability to access this textbook and actually practice this stuff is, I mean, I think OER is literally the future of learning. I think it presents an opportunity that didn't really exist pre-pandemic kind of. So I think it's just another way for people to kind of learn concepts. So that's what I really liked about it. I'll show you another one. The first knowledge check I had is like fill in the blank. So it's kind of, first one says the definition of accounting. Accounting is the process of organizing, but analyzing, and just communicating, but let's just say adding. Now, it kind of could tell you like which words are right, which ones are wrong. Everything is customizable. I wrote this, try again. You can give them hints. So I think there's a lot of functionality behind this platform that's like really exciting. I think for anyone who's ever taught a class and kind of said, I wish the wording was different, or I wish I could change the problem to be more relatable to maybe it's a Jersey City company or something you want to explain. Like you have the capability to do really anything you want. So I thought that was really a really neat thing. The last thing I'll show you is in the introduction. This is actually what Daisy showed me. We did this for the sesquicentennial, but one of the interactivities is actually a digital timeline. So this is not a graded activity, but it's kind of cool because you can kind of put in some highlights. This is like the background of my career and stuff like that, but I was just playing around with it. But there's a lot of different interactivities you can develop and embed into it. And that's what the H5P like activities are. And the pilot that I was a part of last fall with Pressbooks was being able to connect Pressbooks to Blackboard so that when my students go in the Blackboard shell and use Pressbooks, the assignments get auto-graded into the gradebook. So it just like even allows another layer of focusing your time on more valuable things than just the grading itself and whatnot. And there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing that. So so that was kind of one of the like allures to me. Like I enjoyed the OER experience. Challenges, unexpected hurdles. I would say, like we all started in 2023, and now we have our books up there. It's a long process. Getting it to short modules and design it the way you want. It's like putting together a 10-year packet. You got to put a little bit of time each day. It's not really something that can be accomplished overnight. But if you're someone that, like I said, if you wanted to just try even a module or one question, I think starting small goes a long way. I'm sure every single person in here, like I said, maybe you use a textbook and you're like, I wish it was just worded different, or maybe everything is good and I just want to add a problem, in my language, the way I want to say it. You have the capability of doing that. And unexpected hurdles, I would say one of the things is for accounting, when I transitioned to moving some of the problems into the textbook, like the fill in the blank is words. But in accounting, we use numbers for a lot of the problems. There isn't necessarily an activity that really allows us to, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to use the number grading. That doesn't really exist. It's not as functional. So there's ways around that, but I'm just saying that me personally, that was one of the challenges and hurdles I had. But there was no hurdle that ever wanted to make me stop, and doing it alongside my colleagues, like, I know we were all working in the same boat, and I think the beauty of us being the cohort from 2023 just shows, like, this time last year, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any of this. But as we kind of had more deadlines and we kind of did these speaking engagements, it actually did encourage me to set aside more time to move the book forward. And for me, it's definitely paid a lot of dividends for the experience in the class. And I know the students are having a good experience in it as well. So so those were just some of the things that emphasize Pressbooks tool. Very straightforward. There's a lot of great resources that Pressbooks offers to help you get started. Not only do we have our cohort, but there's other people out there too. There's a lot of resources to help. So, for those that are interested in starting, like, you don't have to feel like it's this daunting task. If you feel like you're already adapting stuff a little bit in your course, this is definitely for you. And oh yeah, last thing, finally, it was a positive impact amongst students. It allows them to engage in the course, and even if there are moments when, our students, I teach capstone and accounting as well, and a lot of our students always have internships, whether it's the spring tax season or even the fall. So sometimes they can't really always be in class on certain days or certain time periods of the course, but Pressbooks has allowed them to engage in the course without being there and without feeling like they're being left behind. So I thought that was just an interesting dynamic, teaching 7 years later, 14 semesters later. So yeah. Thanks, Daisy.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, and if you guys are curious about H5P, look it up. It's actually an open source thing in and of itself. It's interesting. It's like a whole open education ecosystem with Jamobi's open source and H5P. The thing is, it's internet language. So unless you have an H5P editor, how do you build like these interactive activities? But that's what Pressbooks gives you, is a little editor, so you can do that. So hopefully Mike Walonen is online. You with us, Mike?
Yep, most definitely.
Okay, tell your story.
All right, thank you, Daisy, and thanks to everybody for coming out. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person today. I've been looking forward to this panel a lot, but we got enough snow where I live that my son's school was on delayed opening, so they only opened up like 15 minutes before my last class of the day was supposed to start. So I've been having to work remotely today. I wanted to say, for starters, if you have any textbook projects in mind, but you're kind of on the fence, you're daunted by the amount of work it seems that would be involved, that it's actually really not that difficult to engage in these projects. If the writing you have to do, when we have to do academic writing, we're working on a scholarly book or article. That writing is very esoteric, and we have to spend a lot of time worrying about semantics, piecing over our wording, because we're writing for a super specialist audience. Here we're writing for a more general audience, and it's closer to, while you're still using formal English, it's much closer to the conversational voice we might use when we're teaching a class. And presumably people are going to be writing these textbooks for classes they've taught multiple times. So you have your notes from having taught the class multiple times. And for me, this was simply taking those notes and writing it up in the form of a textbook. So the project went really quickly. The writing was not very difficult. I had a lot of support, a supportive writing cohort, the folks you've already heard from today, us working as a writing community and talking to each other on a biweekly basis. A lot of support from the library staff. And when it came to editing the book, Daisy was very supportive in having different librarians read different chapters for copy editing purposes. I also had my wife do pro bono copy editing for me as well. And to this date, we've only found one missed copywriting error. So there was that support for the cover of the book. One of the library's student workers formulated that cover for us. So yeah, and it's been a very rewarding project as well. The old textbook I was using cost on the average about $100, a little more than that if it's a new copy, maybe a little less for the electronic copy, but on the average $100. So every time I teach this class, this is a textbook for our Common Core fiction class, Introduction to Fiction, which is one of our most in-demand Common Core classes. It's a class I teach by far the most at St. Peter's. So if you figure $100 per student, I have on the average 30 students in an in-person class, that's $3,000 I'm saving St. Peter's students per time I teach the class. So I probably already, save St. Peter's students in just like the year and a half, because I was on sabbatical one semester. So the year and a half I've been using this textbook, I've probably already saved St. Peter's students $10,000 collectively. So it's been rewarding in that sense to make the educational materials more accessible. And as Phil says, it's very hard to find the perfect textbook. A lot of the textbook, I remember an astronomy class I had as an undergraduate where we would get assigned like 2 pages here, 2 pages there, like jumping around the textbook. Clearly the instructor didn't like the way the information was presented. And I think we find that a lot, that some things are not described well, some things might be inaccurate, the language is not great, the examples aren't great. In my field, English, a lot of the examples we might find in a methodology textbook are from dead white male authors. A lot of the authors I teach are African-American authors from the developing world. And so I like being able to write this textbook and use those as examples within the textbook to have it be able to speak more to the diverse backgrounds of our St. Peter's students. So I find I've gotten this textbook works a lot better. It explains information in a clear manner, and it's written at a level that I think is a little challenging, but not too challenging for St. Peter's students. So I was able to gear the language to the level of explanation that over the years I found that St. Peter's students need. So I found the students get more out of it. Both my online students and my in-person students have an easier time working with this textbook. And then, of course, it is much cheaper because it's free. To just give you a brief overview of the book, it's a methodological introduction to the analysis of fiction. So most of the books that exist will tell students a little bit, and usually not enough, about how to analyze fiction. They kind of are working from a presumption from an earlier generation where there was a different kind of cultural literacy in the United States, and we presume students read more and maybe didn't need some things explained. So a lot of the textbooks that are out there are just anthologies of lots of works of fiction and then a little bit of explanation. Well, the works of fiction, they're either in the public domain or even a lot of contemporary works of fiction are available for free online from literary publications like The New Yorker. And so I find students didn't need to be paying for the literary sources. They just needed the methodological parts. And so I broke it down. And as you can see here, I have 11 chapters, including one chapter that samples student essays from St. Peter's students. I got their permission. They were very happy and honored to be included in the textbook. But so there's 9 chapters of methodology, basic considerations for interpretation of narrative fiction. And then what are the different formal structures? How do we analyze for point of view? How do we analyze for characterization, setting, symbolism, these major meaning producing units that we have to take into account when we're analyzing works of fiction. And then there's a chapter on writing, right? That just kind of recaps on what the students will have encountered in their Composition 2 class, their research and college writing class. And applies that to the specific kinds of writing they'd be doing in a class like this, analyzing works of fiction. So again, it's been one of the more rewarding things I've been able to do here at St. Peter's because it saved our students so much and monetarily. And I find that you just have an easier time working with the textbook and they're learning more from the class, being able to use this textbook as opposed to what I was having to use beforehand.
Thanks so much, Mike. So, I don't know, folks have questions about OER and Pressbooks, yeah?
Actually, Mike, hi, it's Rachel.
Hey, Rachel, I thought I recognized your voice.
I'm thinking about doing a poetry textbook because I cannot find one that really does what I need it to do, or if it does, then it's not really very accessible, or it's, all that kind of stuff everyone's finding. But one issue that we will have in English, so there'll be a lot of issues with copyright. What kinds of so for poetry, I will want to provide a significant number of poems as examples, but I'm going to have to, I guess, go with older works because they're in the public domain, and that could prove a problem unless I was actually thinking of approaching contemporary poets myself to get their permission, that something like that. But as I recall, Mike, in your textbook, I think you don't provide the stories, but you point toward them in your prompts or questions. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the end of each chapter, I have suggested reading. So if an instructor was looking to, especially like somebody who was a first-time instructor for the course, somebody in grad school, here are some stories you could use that are really helpful for teaching students about symbolism, for example. And so I think that's a problem, but it's a very surmountable problem because, as you said, you could use older works that are in the public domain, but there's a lot of contemporary poetry available online, especially if you like the Poetry Foundation and some of those other web pages, you can have stuff by contemporary poets. And so, fair academic use, you either give them the link in the syllabus or you download a PDF and stick it on Blackboard. But yeah, I didn't include any of those selections because I didn't want to have to deal with any of the issues of copyright.
Yeah. And then of course, with the longer works of fiction, it's easier to point toward them. For poetry, I want to have, like a little example, examples. But I guess I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to piggyback what Rachel was mentioning, but more about the adoption, like Phil did. So how does the copyright work for adopting a book?
Sure. So when you go into the Pressbooks directory, you will see that all of these books have some type of Creative Commons license. Creative Commons was created really by artists, I believe, when the internet came around, because copyright's automatic in the United States. So if you put something online, let's say you write a textbook, it's automatically copyrighted and someone would legally have to ask your permission or, but Creative Commons, you're saying use it. And we get into this in our summer institute, but there's different types of Creative Commons license, and they basically tell the end user how they can use it. And all of these guys were required kind of to give a Creative Commons license that would allow people to essentially modify the the end product. So in Pressbooks, you actually go into, when I give you an account, if anyone wants an account, please just email me if you want to start today, or if you want to wait and apply to get some help. But in the Pressbooks directory, you should, any book that has a Creative Commons license, you'll see if it permits it. You can clone it, and then in a few minutes, you really have it in your interface, and you can start editing and modifying. I was going to show, she couldn't come today, but I won't throw it up there, but Georgia Krall had a conference today. It was very hard to plan this, but she used a podcasting book that she liked. It was completely done. It was like a how-to on podcasting, but she wanted to kind of diversify it for our students. So she cloned it. I don't think she edited much, but she added a whole appendix of interviews with diverse podcasters. And she even had her students assist with some of that. She embedded videos, and it's a very interesting, she kind of left the text alone, and maybe she reordered it. So yeah, once you clone the book, you can edit it. We had a lot of challenges. I've learned a lot from this first cohort, but then it's like, how do I give credit to the additional author? And also, but we've learned best practices on how to do that. And yeah, and I also, these folks helped me. Sorry, you guys were like the guinea pigs, but we relearned for the 2024 Summer Institute. I think our very first session now is citation and attribution in OER work, because there's the attribution where you're like legally giving credit to the original author, but then there's also the question of citation. They're kind of two separate things, but it gets a little muddy, but we do kind of work on that. But yeah, check out Pressbooks. Almost anything in here can be cloned and spiffed up.
We just have to cite properly, like if you're taking a clone book or something, you have to cite it, like take the reference material and then cite that this is from where we have got it.
Yeah, and then I will also say, because I'm sure that's like on everybody's thought, okay, I might create my thoughts, and then, can I monetize off it, especially if we're just getting a grad? And I'm not saying that's the route, but it makes sense. We're doing the work. I would say one thing that I didn't get a chance to show is each of those pages have their own individual web link. And actually in the platform behind, you get complete all the analytics behind who's visiting each web page. So I will say, like, my book, like I started it in August 28th. And I used it in classes, but I created like a LinkedIn page just to find another way to promote it, because it's learning accounting skills. To date, I think 3,000 people have visited the book, and and you can even see which page, which activity, and then you can see where it came from, whether it's like Google search or through the St. Peter's Pressbooks directory and stuff. So I think that's something that like we've never had access to, I guess, as individuals. So I think that becomes pretty valuable. And when you're thinking about giving away your information for free, I guess if you can show that it's a popular page or chapter or book, then maybe you can leverage that as well. So just some thoughts around the Creative Commons, maybe not monetizing the book itself, but the impact of the book too. Yeah.
And in terms of compensation, there is a small grant amount that's paid out, as Daisy said, and I found it to be very fair for the amount of work involved.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question. With so many of the established textbooks that are out there, if you go out to Quizlet or the case studies, the questions at the end of the chapter, all of that material is out and searchable. Have you found that same dynamic with the Pressbooks that you guys have written, or is it too soon?
I haven't seen it out there, but I think the way I was approaching creating the book, as in I was going to create my own book. And then I figured, maybe remixing the original book that's already on OpenStax. Thankfully, there was one. Once I remixed the book, like I was just using their problems. So I would say that in class, you would be able to know who can complete what assignments, especially when it gets to the end of the semester. So I wasn't really too concerned about them having the answers already. I think, because I did
is that what you mean?
short
Like
digestible.
You sign a case study at the back of the book, and there's, let's say, 5 questions in the textbook, and all of a sudden, everybody's got the same answer, because you go out onto the internet, the entire case study, and the answers are all there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely a concern. I would say that's also a concern in the design of the course, right? Because there's different ways to assess the knowledge other than just the problems themselves. And I think that's probably a more design element of, and maybe a rethinking of, okay, we give them this stuff, even if they can get the answers, but then what are the questions you want to ask that might be able to test that knowledge, right? Without doing those direct questions. So that's also possible.
I would say that that's kind of why I wanted to make my own book, is because like when I'm using existing resources out there, like I teach intro to psychology. Every university has thousands of students who go through that class. If I use any published textbook, their question banks, like you're right, it's all out there. So I write my own for my intro class. But like I do that for all my classes. At some point, it's like, well, I'm writing all my own stuff anyways. I might as well turn it into a textbook, right?
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go look at the analytics, Phil. I forgot, because last time I reported to the grant was a while back in October, and your books were getting like a lot of, it's not just St. Peter's students.
Well, so I wanted to get through a whole semester with the book first to like students help me find errors and things like that. But like Jamovi, the software that it's based around, it is open source. So they have an entire website that if you have a resource, you can send it to them and they'll post it on there. So I was planning on setting my book for them to post on there, just other people can find it. Yeah.
And the last thing I would just say to that is that the reason I did the OER too is because since Intro to Psychology or Intro to Accounting, a lot of people may say, oh, I want to learn about psychology. How can I do that? We usually say, well, you got to register in the fall. You got to wait like 6 months. With this, you can give them the link today and they get the chance to practice that skill set. And I think that's just a complete game changer when it comes to recruiting people, or just not even recruiting, it's exposing the student to that skill set without having to formally be registered in the class. I think that's a dynamic that OER brings for sure.
Just, I don't have a question, just a comment. This is great. I teach, for the last 6 years, I've been teaching a business administration capstone. And the way I teach it, it's a simulation. So I cover strategy, marketing, finance, budgeting, all of the organizational design. You can't find a textbook that does all of that stuff. So this would be perfect for it.
Oh, nice. Apply. I'm going to be sending out the application. I know there's been a lot of conversation about federal grants, but my boss over at the provost's office is saying we are going forth. The money has been granted to us under the U.S. Department of Education, and well, it exists.
Try to spend it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you can see, it's a very student-centered kind of project. So.
This is a summer stipend, or how is it?
Yeah, so the stipend, as I mentioned, we didn't want to like micromanage people as far as like deadlines and time frames. So you get the first third of the stipend when you do the summer thing, just for showing up and learning some stuff. And then we kind of withhold the second third of the stipends when you publish in Pressbooks. But as Sharath says, you can always edit. Like you're never, but once you're going to use it in the class, and it's in our Pressbooks catalog. So you click something in the interface, I think, to make it public. And then you get your third stipend. We're very withholding because we want those assessment results for the grant and we have Brittany, thank you, helped us do this Qualtrics, really helped us design, I think, a really, how could I describe it? Robust assessment tool that gets at the different aspects of the OER and even asks students a little bit like, some of that we're gathering with the assessment, some interesting stuff about just students' experience with textbooks, I think. So we're a little stingy as far as how we let the stipends go out, but that was partly Dr. Mylon, now president, of her plan to make sure we got all the deliverables from faculty. So
one thing I just meant to say though is the nice thing about this is like as you're using your textbook, you can change it whenever you want. Like so this last semester I used it in my class, Dan used it in his class, but his class was doing different studies, different things, and he was using one of his studies required a statistical analysis that I didn't have in my book. And after he told me he used it, I was like, oh shit, I should add a chapter on that, right? So now I'm going to go and add a chapter on it, right? So as you change your class or change your examples, you can make changes very easily to your textbook.
And there are faculty that do engage students in that. It's called open pedagogy, and they kind of build a book with their students.
I haven't seen it, but if I kind of did the groundwork in the Sharath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for anyone who has a 1 o'clock class, it is now.
Yeah, in the fall, and I was wondering if I have like a prototype to work with the class and then work with them,
It's a
augment
cool
it.
thing, and I think with literature, it's used a lot in anthology building, because students feel kind of empowered. I don't know how it looks.
Good job implementing.
Good
Good
job.
job. Yeah. If you guys ever need help or anything, we can always show you. Yeah.
How are you?
Your Monday was I started trying to do the word count. I don't know, like text images.